Oh, okay, so there you go. That's what happens when you jump timing. Alright guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another video. Listen, some big things happen. I got a new camera. We can talk about it here in a second. I'm going to do some camera trickery here to make this area feel a whole lot bigger. Because right now this is like not a manageable working space right here. Okay. That's just much better. Look at all this room for activities now. Okay, it's not really camera trickery. What it is I just cleaned up my garage and pushed the car out a little tiny bit. We're gonna time this Coyote motor today from start to finish. There's not really like a whole lot of videos. I think there's a couple of videos that are just like show you a couple of clips of it, but we're gonna go from start to finish the whole entire thing. Okay, so these are going to be this is our primary chains here, secondary chains here, secondary, primary, the exhaust sprocket, the intake sprocket, and intake, and then exhaust cam, passenger bank, intake, passenger bank, intake driver, exhaust driver, then the guides and the tensioner. Same thing with this thing, guides and tensioner, and then also the cam bolts. Now these cams are locked out. These are the BPS, Billet Pro Shops lockouts, but on a factory, you're gonna time this the exact same. My timing marks are gonna look a little bit off just because my cams are locked out, but the same principles are gonna kind of apply. We'll talk about real quick a couple of things that are important. The first one, cams on and off the crank. When you have the cam caps on and tightened down and the primary and secondary timing chains are not connected in time, do not turn the crank. I mean, you can to a little tiny bit, left or right when you're trying to get the timing marks lined up. But generally speaking, what you don't want to be doing is spinning the cam or the crank over when you have the timing chains off. So just don't do that. That's kind of like plain and simple, general, like everybody understands, right? Second, throw away the whiteout. You don't need a whiteout. The Ford and every engine maker ever was smart enough to put timing links and timing marks on all their stuff. Just throw away the whiteout. Don't overthink it. Really, that should be last. The last thing is the 12 o'clock position for the keyway on your crank. 12 o'clock position for the keyway. This is a little bit off right now. This needs to be pointed straight up and down. That puts your pistons inside the cylinders in a non-interference position, so you can tighten down the cams and the valves are not going to be pushed into a piston. Don't also confuse the keyway on the crank with the timing mark on the crank. So the keyway, you're going to have pointing straight up and down. And then the timing mark is going to be kind of down at the 7 or 8 o'clock position over here off to the side, and you can see that on the crank sprocket when we get to that point. Now these are stock cams. I talked already about the green cams in a previous video. If you want that, I can link it right here. I might mention here this little QR code that comes on the factory ones. I kind of use these as a point of reference to make sure that I'm putting the cams in the proper orientation before I'm trying to slip these sprockets on. It just makes your life a lot easier if you kind of remember that these are going to be pointing up when you're installing the cams. Do your best to keep the cam caps organized, because what you don't want to do is mix up the cam caps and put one where it wasn't before, because that can create new wear lines and mismatch. These things have been running together for a long time, and they have kind of like a pattern rubbed into the cap and the cam that you want to keep. You want to keep these all married up. When you're putting the cam caps in, don't make the mistake of, see, this head is like a half circle, semicircle, and this side over here is flat. When you get in the car, it could be a little bit confusing. If you flip it around this way, the semicircles are on the inside together. It almost looks like it's supposed to be that way when you put it in here with the spark plug tube. So don't get confused. The semicircles point towards the exhaust side on both the driver and the passenger side. So that semicircle on this exhaust one down here does not go facing the spark plug tube. And then if you forget that, from factory, they have these grooved into them. You can see there's a number 2. Well, it's upside down, but there's a number 2 and it has an arrow and it's pointing forward. So you know that this is the The second one, this one here is numbered 1, this one's numbered 6. Both sides of these this is all one cap that goes together. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's the same on both sides. So it's just important really that you keep this side's the driver's side and this side is the passenger side, and then you should be able to base the rest of the cam caps off if you get disorganized. So those two are the front two are the important ones to keep organized. I'm gonna get the cams on the car. Once I get the cams on the car, I will, I'll install one of the cams with you guys to kind of just talk about it, one side of the cams. Then I'm just gonna kind of throw it on time lapse once the cams are actually on the car. Don't get me wrong, the GoPros are still gonna have their place, and I'm not gonna use this all the time. I might use it all the time. To be honest, it's kind of cumbersome here in the garage, but there's a lot of stuff that I'd like to be able to do for you guys that I can't do with just the GoPros, like cinematic type stuff and some panning shots that are nice and smooth with some whatever. I would like to be able to give you guys a little something more here. Turn on the gimbal. Bam. Pops 2. Here's the old setup. And this is kind of like, this is the new setup here. I mean, it's been super easy so far to use. Well, now that I say that, it's going to be more difficult. But here's kind of like what don't ignore, I'm wearing shorts today, guys. Don't look at my shorts. I think you might be able to see probably a little bit more in the GoPro, but I wonder, the image probably looks a little bit better in this camera. So that's the same thing here with the car. I'm looking through the GoPro and the camera at the same time, and you for sure can see more. I wonder what you guys think, which one looks better. So they both for sure have their own, uses. I don't know if I can do a side by side. I'll do one clip after the other and you guys tell me, which one you guys like. Oh, here's another tip. This is a lot easier when you have the spark plugs out, because the valves are going to be stuck shut. Much easier. So we're going to put the keyway at 12 o'clock. Like I said, now we know that there's not going to be any piston to valve interference. So I just happen to be fresh out of assembly lube, but what I do have is some break-in oil. How you can tell, exhaust valves have 2 dimples on it and the intake valves have 3 dimples on them. But we'll go ahead and get this situated in here. The cams are installed and we have no timing chains or sprockets or anything on it. Okay, so I'll get the other side done real quick and then we'll talk about the timing chains and timing markers. This is how I remember. On this side over here, we've got 2 dark links. And then on this side, there's 1 dark link. I think of it like the exhaust valves are going to be darker than the intake valves. So two dark links, exhaust side. That's how I remember. So on this side, you split the timing mark on the sprocket with the 2 dark links. On the intake side, you straddle the dark mark over the sprocket. So here we have one of the timing marks on the intake, and then these two matched up over here on the exhaust. My my cams are locked out, so they're going to look a little bit different than what you have. But what we're going to be going off, this is the left side of the engine. So we're going to be going off this L, which is lined up right here with this timing mark for the primary. Now this is the right side. Put these over here. Okay, so now we have this side set up. And when you flip this over, you'll see that there's an R. This R lines up with the timing mark right here, and that's for the right side of the engine. Now on the, you can see both of them. See, this side has a left and a timing mark. For when we're on the right side of the engine, we're going to ignore this. We're going to pretend we're not using that. So coming back to the ones that we're about to do, we know we're working on the left side of the engine, so we're going to use this left and this timing mark. We are not going to use the R in this timing mark, so ignore this one. Because we're working on the left side of the engine, we're using this timing mark for the next step. So this is the cutout right here for the dowel, and the cutout right here for the dowel. So you can see that they're gonna kind of line up when I flip this up. Okay, so this side was giving me a little trouble. I had to move the camera out of the way while I did this. So what was happening is the spring pressure from the valve springs is holding the cams in like this position of least resistance on the rockers and the lobes. So it kind of gets set in this like between two high spots essentially, and it likes to hang out here, and same thing for the exhaust valves, but that doesn't totally line up in time. So what you have to do when that happens, you get this, once you get this one on and started so that your bolts thread in nicely, this phaser won't want to slide on all the way. So you just put a vice grip or the 1 3/4 wrench over here and just kind of put a little bit of rotation against the spring pressure on this as you rock this phaser back and forth until it finds the dowel, and then it'll slip on, and you know it slipped on when the chain is in line with both phasers, as well as the guides right there. So, and then also all of the bolts start freely. They're not like binding, I'm not forcing them. So now those are on good and they're ready to be torqued down. Those are now on and torqued down. 132 inch-pounds and then an additional 90 degrees. That'll get you torqued on that. I'm gonna do this side over here off camera. Now we're gonna be talking about these timing marks down here on the leading edge of the cam sprocket. Hopefully you guys can see. They're on the leading edge of the cam sprocket. It's gonna be down kind of like on the 7 o'clock position when you have the keyway pointed up. That's the timing mark that we're gonna be going off of for the crank, for the primary chains. And then again, like I said, up here, we're going to be using this right hand for this side and this left hand over here for this side. We've got our primary chain here. Now, this one just has one set of dark links opposite of each other. Pretty easy. Okay, so there is our timing mark. And then the dark link is right on the timing mark. So we are good down there. Okay, so we are on the bottom down there. So what that means is we're just going to have to kind of pull the camshafts over a little bit to help us get these lined up. So it did jump a tooth down here, but we'll double check. But here we're on the dark mark there, and then for my own sanity, I'm going to come down there and double check. I'm not going to trust this camera, but it looks like I'm on down here. I'm going to go down there and look. All right, next we're going to throw this bad boy on here. You can see this like little screw cap right here, this butts up against the bottom of a spring, which holds up teeth that look just like this, but the reverse of it, which is what prevents it from going back in. What we're gonna do is we're gonna collapse this piston in the vise while keeping this outside of the vise, and then we're gonna push the teeth down with a pick or an Allen key or welding rod, and then we're going to collapse this. And then we'll use this pin back here in the back to hold the actual tensioner from coming back apart. Push in the piston, push the teeth in a little further. Okay, now that we're all the way in, you can insert the welding rod in here and loosen. Now the welding rod is holding, welding rod or Allen key or whatever is holding the backside of these teeth, which is keeping the piston from coming out. So this is how we're going to install it in the car. What you're going to do now is you're going to put on your tensioner guide, and most likely you're not going to have enough slack to get it on down here on the bottom. So what you'll have to do is you're just going to hold the chain at the crank, and you're going to rotate the cam backwards to put all the slack on the tensioner side. And then you'll take the tensioner, slip the tensioner on, boom, just like that. Sorry, you'll slip on the tensioner guide. Then you're going to take your tensioner, finger tight, and then torque them down. Now, this side of the engine isn't time. I could, if I didn't have the cams put on that side over there, I would be able to spin the engine over. This side would not have any interference because the cams and the crank are timed. Real quick, one more thing, just double check and make sure that all of your timing marks on this side, both on the secondary chains, on the intake and the exhaust side, and on the primary chains, make sure all your timing marks are lined up, because it'd be a really big bummer to do this other side and then find out that you messed this up over here. Yeah, I think that'll probably wrap up today's video. I don't really have anything else. Let me know how you guys like the this whole fancy pants setup here. If you guys are a fan of the new camera or not. It also has a microphone up here on top. Thanks for watching. Like always, comment, like, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video.
Rise up, we gon' make it out, gotta rise up, tick, 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 time's up. Rise up, stay ready so that nothing can surprise us. Rise up, tick, 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 time's up. Now we ain't gonna lose, nah, look at what we came through, yeah. And we making sure that everybody eat, ain't one person stronger than the crew. Nah, we do what we gotta do. Method is methodical. Whole squad bulletproof. He'll never get a shot at you. On the rise and we started at the bottom too. But we ain't never gonna stop till we got a view. Ain't nothing that we can't do. Yeah, you can't be in our circle if you're looking for an angle. Even if it's painful, let it motivate you. Everything that we manifested, it became true. And we all know the meaning to quit. And we ain't stopping till the whole world fiending for this. Nah, no frauds, everything is legit. On the podium, raising our fists. Rise up, we gon' make it out, gotta rise up, tick, 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 time's up. Rise up, stay ready so that nothing can surprise us. Rise up, tick, 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 time's up. Yeah. I know what I believe that I can achieve. I work when I dream, I'll never sleep. About vibes, yeah, you gotta match my energy. I know if I build a better team, I build a better me. Rise up, yeah, rise up. Tears I cry, my sweat, my blood. Putting in the time until my time comes. I'ma be defined by the things I've done, yeah. Voice raised till they cover my face. Cause you know they silence you when you got something to say. And I never buckle under the weight.